When we embrace ahimsa, we recognize there is no place for prejudice, no place for violence, no place for hate. Not here in America, not in India, not anywhere in the world, and not in Hinduism, said Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi in September 2018. Krishnamoorthi, who first took office in January 2017, was speaking at the World Hindu Congress in Chicago, Illinois. However, ahimsa, the concept of nonviolence, was sometimes in short supply at the event. Billed as a religious gathering, one would not have expected it to be protested. Yet it was, intensely. A few hours after a keynote speech by Mohan Bhagwat, chief of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, a Hindu nationalist paramilitary, a group of young South Asian American protesters who had infiltrated the event disrupted it, chanting, "RSS, turn around, we don't want you in our town." They were immediately rushed by a mob of audience members. They choked, kicked, and spat on us, reported the protesters, most of whom were young women. As they were hustled out, Vijay Jolly, an Indian politician who previously headed the Overseas Friends of BJP, the international wing of India's ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, shouted, "We should have bashed them up." Over the following 2 days, hundreds of protesters from a wide variety of ethnic and religious backgrounds, including Hindus, gathered outside the World Hindu Congress. Protests centered on 2 issues. First, the presence of the RSS chief. Second, that the conference was organized by the Vishwa Hindu Parishad of America, VHPA, the international wing of the VHP of India, which is itself the religious wing of the RSS. Just 3 months before the event, the US government had labeled the VHP as a religious militant organization. I must tell you that some of my friends and constituents were very concerned with my presence here today, said Krishnamurti when he finally spoke at the event. I decided I had to be here because I wanted to reaffirm the highest and only form of Hinduism that I've ever known and been taught, namely one that welcomes all people, embraces all people, and accepts all people, regardless of their faith, including all my constituents. Some of Krishnamurti's fellow Hindu office holders felt differently and publicly declined invitations to attend. Ram Vilivalam, then a candidate but now an Illinois state senator, announced that he could not participate or stand by silently because of the nationalist individuals and organizations affiliated with the event. Even Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, despite her long track record of association with the RSS-BJP, backed out. Originally slated to chair the conference, Gabbard officially announced her withdrawal just days before, calling it a partisan Indian political event. Nevertheless, Krishnamurti's rationalization for attending might have withstood scrutiny, were it not for a few inconvenient facts. It was not his first time speaking at a VHP of America event, nor was it his last time rubbing shoulders with U.S. affiliates of the Sangh Parivar, or family of organizations, as the RSS and its various affiliates are known. Furthermore, his congressional campaign coffers have been filled with hundreds of thousands of dollars from donors linked to various outfits of the American Sangh. In September 2017, a year before the World Hindu Congress, Krishnamurti spoke at a VHP of America conference in Indiana on the topic of political engagement for promoting Hindu interests outside of India. Other speakers at the event included a number of donors to his congressional campaign. One was Nanan Desai, president of the Tampa Bay chapter of the Hindu Swayamsevak Sangh, HSS, which is the international wing of the RSS. Another was Shamkant Sheth, an advisor to the Chicago chapter of VHP of America. The event itself was actually co-hosted by VHPA Chicago. Executives in VHPA's Chicago chapter have played an important role in Krishnamurti's campaigns for office. Sheth, for instance, has donated $1,750 over the years. Vinesh Virani, a vice president of the group, who has been described as a close supporter, has not only donated $1,500, but has also hosted events for the congressman, Nirav Patel, the group's president, has donated $300. But no one from the group has been a greater supporter than VHPA Chicago advisor and former VHPA governing councillor Bharat Barai. Bharat Barai and his wife Panna have donated nearly $32,000 to Krishnamoorthi's campaigns for Congress. Yet Barai has done more than just give money. Days before the March 2016 primary, for instance, Barai, joined by overseas friends of the BJP activists, rallied behind Krishnamoorthi while he was still just a candidate seeking the Democratic Party's nomination for Illinois' 8th Congressional District. The event was hosted, reported India Life and Times, with a shared mission to collectively propel him into office. The timing was perfect. Had Krishnamoorthi run in the primary election just 2 years earlier, Barai would likely have been far too busy to help, as he was, in April 2014, leading a team of 650 volunteers who traveled to Gujarat, India, to back Narendra Modi's campaign for Prime Minister. Barai, described as Modi's longtime friend and confidant, is one of America's leading champions of the pogrom-tainted Hindu nationalist politician. Modi, a lifelong member of the RSS who was reassigned by the paramilitary in 1987 to work within its political wing, the BJP, traveled to the US twice in the 1990s. The second time, in 1998, he was dispatched by the BJP to review the activities of the overseas friends of the BJP. And both times, he stayed with Bharat Barai. In 2002, after Modi was appointed Chief Minister of Gujarat, he was implicated in an anti-Muslim pogrom that left approximately 2,000 dead at the hands of RSS and VHP workers. When he was subsequently banned from entering the US for his role in the pogrom, Barai went to work to keep Modi connected with the diaspora. From 2007 to 2014, he hosted regular video conferences with Modi, renting out halls in the US, packing them with hundreds and thousands of attendees, and beaming the events to audiences in cities around the country. Modi was the quote-unquote rising sun, said Barai, who did everything possible to promote him in America. When Krishnamoorthi spoke at that VHPA conference, he had just recently returned from a maiden trip to India in August 2017. Meeting there personally with Modi to discuss strengthening the special relationship between the US and India, he was pictured grinning from ear to ear as he sat with the man who just a few years earlier was banned from entering the US. And then, immediately upon his return, he hosted an HSS delegation in his district office. Just 8 months later, in April 2018, Krishnamurti made a second trip to India to again meet with Modi. In his second photo op, he grinned even bigger than the last time. The meeting with the Prime Minister only underscored that at the heart of our friendship with India are the values that we share, a commitment to freedom, democracy, and the rule of law, he reported. Aside from Modi's past involvement in the 2002 Gujarat pogrom, his supposed commitment to such values was contradicted by the realities of his regime. Despite Indian government statistics indicating that communal violence has increased sharply over the past 2 years, the Modi administration has not addressed the problem, reported the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, an independent body of the State Department, in 2018. His administration also has done little to provide justice for victims of large-scale past incidents of communal violence, often caused by inflammatory speeches delivered by leaders of Modi's party. Massive violent incidents are more likely to reoccur if the Modi administration and state governments continue to fail to punish individuals who engage in violence and incitement to violence against religious minorities. While Modi's regime faced censure from the US government, Krishnamurti dug in deeper with his key US backers. The day after returning from his second trip to India, he was in Houston, Texas, to keynote a banquet where he presented an award to overseas friends of the BJP activist Gitesh Desai. That very same day, 7 April, Desai made his first of several donations to Krishnamurti's campaign. Other speakers at the banquet included Sri Preston Kulkarni, who was then in the midst of his first campaign for Congress and had just been endorsed by Krishnamurti 2 months earlier, as well as Rishi Buttada. Kulkarni is currently facing his own allegations of support by the American Sangh. When he won the Democratic Party's nomination for Texas's 22nd Congressional District in May 2018, he credited Rishi Buttada and his father, Ramesh Buttada, saying, "Without them, this campaign literally could not have happened." Aside from the endorsement and their sharing of the stage at the April 2018 banquet, Kulkarni and Krishnamurthi, the congressional candidate and the congressman, are linked by the Buttada family. While the Buttadas have given $39,000 to support Krishnamurti, they have donated over $50,000 to Kulkarni's congressional campaigns. Ramesh Buttada, founder of the first HSS chapter in Houston, is currently national vice president of the group. As far back as 2011, he helped organize training camps for overseas friends of the BJP activists in Texas to support the BJP's election efforts in India. In 2014, while his cousin Vijay Pallod, also a donor to Krishnamurti, joined a team of 30 Houstonians who traveled to India to campaign for the BJP, Buttada oversaw a phone bank of 700 volunteers who called Indians to urge them to support the Hindu Nationalist Party. 5 months after Krishnamurti keynoted the Houston banquet, he spoke at the World Hindu Congress in Chicago, where his donors, Ramesh Buttada of the HSS and Vijay Pallod, were also in attendance. After the congressman withstood the pressure and made an appearance at the World Hindu Congress, Bharat Barai, who had spoken at the controversial Chicago event, keynoted a fundraiser for him in June 2019. The OFBJP's, the Overseas Friends of the BJP's, Prabhakar, an activist in the group, who had recently been in India to campaign for the BJP's election, attended, donated, and wrote about the fundraiser. Modi had just won re-election the previous month, and it was, reported Prabhakar, a chief topic. Barai spoke of Indo-US relations post the landslide victory of Modi-ji and BJP, wrote Prabhakar. Barai recalled his personal association with Prime Minister Modi-ji and the transition to a corrupt, free, efficient, people-oriented government for India. At this fundraiser for Krishnamurti, he says, everyone got a first-hand update on what is currently happening in the US Congress and in New India under Modi. 3 months after the fundraiser, the congressman was back in Houston to keynote another banquet, this one on 8 September, hosted by Seva International, an RSS-affiliated charitable organization whose US branch is chaired by HSS Vice President Ramesh Buttada. After the banquet, Krishnamurti soon returned to Houston for a third time that year, when on 22 September, he was among 24 lawmakers, most from Texas, who attended the Howdy Modi mega reception. Howdy Modi marked Krishnamurti's third meeting with Modi in 2 years. This one was particularly noteworthy because all of his fellow Indian Americans in US Congress skipped the event, which was fiercely protested by tens of thousands who rallied outside, chanting, "Modi, Modi, you can't hide, you committed genocide." Perhaps for that reason, although 60 lawmakers were originally predicted to attend, only 24 showed up. Key organizers of the event were all Krishnamurti donors and Buttada family members. Jugal Malani, for instance, Ramesh Buttada's brother-in-law and business partner, chaired the event committee, while Rishi Buttada was the event's official spokesperson. The senior Buttada was a patron of the event. Meanwhile, Bharat Barai was also in attendance. How could Krishnamurti have skipped Howdy Modi, when some of his chief financiers are champions of Modi, like Barai and Buttada? Just as with the World Hindu Congress, the congressman faced heavy criticism, this time even from his 2020 Democratic primary challengers, for participating in what was perceived as a celebration of Modi. As usual, however, the criticism failed to make an impression upon him. Either he hadn't read the reports of rising human rights abuses, or he hadn't believed them. Or perhaps receiving massive donations and free multi-state promotion from people who had worked to elect Modi mattered more to him than avoiding association with an increasingly authoritarian foreign regime. The government failed to prevent or credibly investigate growing mob attacks on religious minorities, marginalized communities, and critics of the government, often carried out by groups claiming to support the government, Human Rights Watch had reported in January 2019. At the same time, some senior BJP leaders publicly supported perpetrators of such crimes, made inflammatory speeches against minority communities, and promoted Hindu supremacy and ultra-nationalism, which encouraged further violence. Such reports, however, did not deter Congressman Krishnamoorthi from speaking at yet another Hindu nationalist event later that year. In October 2019, Krishnamoorthi keynoted an HSS event in Chicago, which was hosted to celebrate the 94th anniversary of the founding of the RSS. As he spoke, the congressman stood before a saffron flag, the symbol of the RSS, as well as pictures of first RSS chief KB Hedgevar and second RSS chief MS Golwalkar. Hedgevar co-founded the RSS in 1925, the same year that Adolf Hitler wrote Mein Kampf. The goal of the RSS, said Hedgevar, was to put into reality the words Hindustan of Hindus. Insisting that India was a nation of Hindu people, he compared it to a Germany of Germans. In his 1939 manifesto, published at the outset of the Second World War, Golwalkar celebrated how the ancient race spirit, which prompted the Germanic tribes to overrun the whole of Europe, has re-risen in modern Germany. It was, he said, even so with us. Our race spirit has once again roused itself. Arguing that only the Hindu has been living here in India as the child of this soil, he declared that non-Hindus have no other choice but to merge themselves in the national race and adopt its culture, or to live at its mercy so long as the national race may allow them to do so. Describing non-Hindus in India, particularly Christians and Muslims, as internal threats and even traitors who had joined the camp of the enemy and left their mother nation in the lurch, Golwalkar said that they must lose their separate existence to merge in the Hindu race, or else be stripped of citizens' rights. Pointing to the Nazis, he applauded them for having purged Germany of Jews to, quote, keep up the purity of the race and its culture. Praising such Nazi racial policies as race pride at its highest, he concluded that they were a good lesson for us in Hindustan to learn and profit by. Since before he took office, Krishnamoorthi began speaking at what is now a total of at least 4 song events. He has met Modi at least 3 times, including 2 in his first term. No criticism has deterred him. No protest has humbled him. He appears devoted to safeguarding the cause of his premier donors and promoters, who are RSS BJP activists dedicated to advancing Narendra Modi's Hindu nationalist agenda. That puts Krishnamoorthi in the position of whitewashing the ongoing atrocities of the Modi regime. As the minorities, the marginalized, and the dissidents in India feel the walls closing in on them, Krishnamoorthi has closed his ears to their cries for help as he continues touting for Modi's Hindu nationalist regime from his ivory tower in Chicago. Raja Krishnamoorthi is, and apparently unashamedly so, the RSS's man in the US Congress.